Thank you. I called to order the regular meeting of the MWPA Board of Directors on October 19th, 2023. Before we begin, I want to let the board know that Christine Murray from Muir Beach has requested that she be permitted to participate remotely due to a family medical emergency. Unless any board member objects, I will grant her request and she will participate via Zoom. Hi, Christine. Christine, please disclose the presence of any other adult in the room during the meeting.
Confirming there are no other adults in the room.
Great, thank you. Martina, could you please call the roll to ensure that we have a quorum?
Certainly. Starting with the County of Marin, Director Rodoni.
Present.
For Fairfax, Director Kohler.
Here.
For Southern Marin, Director Hilliard. For Mill Valley, Director Burke. For Novato, Director Goins.
Here.
For Sleepy Hollow, Director Finn.
Here.
For Marinwood, Director Shea.
Here.
For Cote Madera, Director Casisa.
Here.
For Inverness, Director Donahue. For Larkspur, Director Paulson.
Here.
For Muir Beach, Director Murray.
Here.
For Kentfield, Director Evergettis.
Here.
For Bolinas, Director Molesworth. For Stinson Beach, Director White.
Here.
For San Anselmo, Director Feynman.
Here.
For San Rafael, Director Kurtz.
Here.
And for the town of Ross, President McMillan.
Here, thank you. Agenda adjustments. Do board members or staff have any adjustments to the agenda? Number 4, open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the board of directors at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the board. Please be advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the board is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphone when you are not reporting out. Any public comment?
If there are any members of the public who wish to speak on the current agenda item, the open time for public expression, for those in the room, it does not appear that there are any hands. And for those joining us virtually, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And there are no hands for comment.
Thank you. Number 5, Executive Officer's Report. Executive Officer Mark Brown will provide a staff report on this item.
Good afternoon, President McMillan, board members. I'm very excited about today's meeting because of our partners here from STI to present the evacuation ingress risk assessment. But a quick update on our typical executive officer report. Fire season, fortunately, has been blessedly slow. Fuel moistures continue to trend a little bit above normal. So that's great news. The last fuel moisture that I saw for the live fuel moisture on Mount Tam was 67%. We don't consider critical until we hit 60%. So things are trending quite well. As promised, homeowners insurance continues to be a significant concern for our residents. And within the past 3 weeks, the MWPA has been asked to present about insurance challenges and what the MWPA is doing to help with those insurance challenges. That included a meeting with the Assembly Insurance Committee combined with the Select Committee on Wildfire Prevention. That was last week. It's also afforded an opportunity for us to have a direct conduit to the chief consultant of the Assembly Insurance Committee. I've already reached out to her to plant some seeds for some more ideas. We also presented at the Marin Coalition, and then 2 nights ago at the Central Marin Emergency Response Group discussion, which I thought was really beneficial, had a lot of interesting information. Rachel had some great panelists on there, minus the MWPA guy. But the attorney that was there was fantastic. We had an insurance broker, someone who has had to use insurance because her home was destroyed during wildfire, and then Emily Rogan from United Policyholders. I thought it was a well-facilitated conversation. I did send you guys links, but I wanted to update you a little bit more. We do have a series of wildfire behavior videos that we've created. One just on typical wildfire behavior, and then we've created one on treated versus non-treated forests. So far, without advertising, we have over 500 views of these. And yes, they are long videos. So we were wondering how long people would actually stay and pay attention to them. And 60% of the people are staying well through half of the video. So that's actually pretty good retention. So we're happy with those. The very next one that we're going to be making is basically evacuation survival if you are having to evacuate during hostile fire conditions. It's a concern that a lot of people have. And as soon as Director Burke saw our first video, that was his first request. I want one on evacuation. So we've actually written outline yesterday, and we're going to do a test run of it in a couple in next week or two, that we're going to do a test run and then do the final publishing of it. Very excited about the mulch study that we have been working with. UC Cooperative, UC Cal Poly Humboldt, and then Stephen Quarles, the brains behind it. And Central Marin is using their DSpace funding to help create this mulch study. It is pure scientific research. It's the first pure scientific research on the flammability of mulch. The recommendations that we've been making about mulch have been anecdotal following a fire. Now we're actually going to have scientific research to back what type of recommendations we are making about mulch. Very excited about that. I mentioned at our executive committee meeting that there was a recent Wildfire Mitigation and Management Commission report. A good friend of Marin County by the name of Bob Roper, he was the retired fire chief of Ventura County Fire. He was the Nevada County fire marshal for a period of time, but he's also California's representative on Western Fire Chiefs. And he was on this commission, and he offered to come to the MWPA next month to present on this report. And he specifically reached out to us because MWPA was mentioned often during the building of this report. Citizens Oversight Committee has published their 21-22 report. I've prepared my staff report. It's being reviewed now. We'll bring it to the executive committee in November and to the full board in November. Prescribed fire is picking up. We're getting some fire on the ground, beneficial fire on the ground. 2 weeks ago, we had 3 days of burning up in Novato. Yesterday, this is Ridgecrest up on Mount Tam, an 11-acre burn in heavy fuels, which is the first time we've done heavy fuel burning in Marin County for quite some time. And when I look at this picture, I know that it's got the artistic value of the sun coming through, but I see the exact burn effects that we are looking for. You see complete consumption of the ground fuels with the trees remaining intact. Now, remember, this took a significant amount of work before the fire was ever laid down on the ground so that it could be successful in this way. Tomorrow, if the weather holds, there's going to be a prescribed fire up on in China Camp. And then we will be bringing Deputy Chief Chris Martinelli to our November meeting to talk about how the county of Marin is re-engaging with prescribed fire and the benefits of prescribed fire. And I'm going to end on a really awesome note. 2 nights ago, Jason Weber was nominated or was announced as the California Fire Chief of the Year. Just amazing. It makes me feel, I get a little bit verklempt thinking about it. I'm just so proud of Jason. He deserves it. He has done so much for his communities, our communities, and just if there will be a recognition at Marin County Fire's headquarters on October 30th at 12:30. And if you would like information on how you can RSVP for that, let me know and I'll send you the email for it. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions from the board? Yes, Barbara.
Thanks, Mark, and of course, Jason Weber, we all love him, so that's wonderful. He so deserves it. But question, since you noticed that people stayed halfway through the videos, is there any possibility of shortening the videos to make sure that people will not stop or just a
But
thought?
for the longer one, we actually had explored making it a 3-part video. So we really could, if we continue to have the drop off, we can chop it up into 3 segments.
That might be a good way to go, just to make sure that
Yeah.
people actually watch the whole thing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark. Thanks. Great report. I'm particularly interested in the prescribed fire projects here in Marin, both Novato and at China Camp. My question for you is there any documentation in regards to and record of the pre-work being done, line construction, fuel modification, staffing? We're entering into this new era of prescribed fire, and the word is just try it, just get started. But I'm real interested in any documentation as to the advanced work, the planning, the pre-fire work, the post-fire, the length of staffing, so we can start to pencil some of this stuff out as far as costs and you know the human factor, the financial factor associated with prescribed fire.
The data is definitely there, so we can compile it. The data is there, so we'll be able to put that together.
Anyone else from the board questions? Martina, can you see if there's any public comment on this item?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, please raise your hand in the reactions. And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And it does look like we have a hand raised. I did just want to remind attendees that comments are limited to approximately 3 minutes. Larry Minikis, you should be able to deliver your comment at this time.
Thank you, Martina. Mark, thank you for your report. And just a quick congratulations to Jason. That's really fantastic and very well deserved, having worked with him over these years. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else, Martina?
And if there are any additional members of the public wishing to speak, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And there are no additional hands for comment.
All right, thank you. Let's bring this back to the board for any discussion. Anybody? All right. Item number 6, consent calendar. The opportunity for public comment on consent calendar items will occur prior to the board's discussion of the consent calendar. The board may approve the entire consent calendar with one action. In the alternative, items on the consent calendar may be removed by any board or staff member for separate discussion and vote. I will now take public comment on the consent calendar. Martina?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar item only, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And there are no hands at this time.
Thank you. Do any board members wish to pull an item from the consent calendar?
President McMillan, just one quick update, not asking to pull one, but a clarification that Barbara Kohler noticed was to make sure that the insurance requirements for Bill Keene, when the original contract was signed, was when he was doing business under his own name. And now he's Climate Equity Solutions. And we went back and double checked that the insurance is set up appropriately.
Thank you. And thank you, Barbara, for noticing that. Let's see. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move that.
Second.
Motion by Barbara, second by Gabe. Martina, could you please take a roll call?
Absolutely. For Bolinas, Director Molesworth. It's not here. For Mill Valley, Director Burke. For the City of Larkspur, Director Paulson.
Yes.
For the County of Marin, Director Rodoni.
Yes.
For Inverness Public Utilities District, Director Donahue. For Kentfield, Director Evergettis.
Aye.
For Marinwood, Director Shea.
Aye.
For Muir Beach, Director Murray.
Aye.
For Novato,
Aye.
For Novato, Director Goins.
Aye.
For Sleepy Hollow, Director Finn.
Aye.
And Director Hilliard has not joined us. For Stinson Beach, Director White.
Aye.
For the Town of Corte Madera, Director Casisa.
Yes.
For the Town of Fairfax, Director Kohler.
Yes.
For the Town of San Anselmo, Director Feynman.
Yes.
For the City of San Rafael, Director Kurtz.
Yes.
And for the Town of Ross, President McMillan.
Yes.
And this motion does carry by unanimous vote of all in attendance.
Thank you. Number 7, staff reports. Starting with the October 2023 finance report, Treasurer Alyssa Schiffman will provide the board with a staff report for this item, and there she is. Hi,
Good
Alyssa.
afternoon. Hi. Thank you. So we are just a little bit a quarter through the year, and expenditures are at 12% when we're really about 28% through the year. And we brought last year's final report to the Finance Committee, but we want to review it a little bit more with them. And then once we do that, we will bring that back to the board with the closed report for last year. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing none, public comment about the finance report. Martina?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item 7A, the October finance report for 2023, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And there are no hands for comment at this time. There are also no attendees in the room.
Thank you. Let's bring this item back to the board for any discussion. Anybody? All right, let's move on to item 7B, fiscal year 2022-23 work plan implementation update. Planning and Program Manager Ann Krelock will provide the board with a staff report for this item, and she's up on the screen. Hi, Ann.
Hello. I'm going to share my screen. Are you able to see these slides?
Yes.
Great. And I am participating remotely because I have a child in a school play in a little while, so I wanted to make sure to attend that. All right. So I want to make sure everyone is aware of an upcoming field trip. As you know, we really prioritize getting out in the field with the public, with our partners, and talking about what we do and showing our work. So our next field trip is highlighting work on the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break. This is in year 1 of implementation. We're very excited about it. And we're going to be meeting folks out in the field October 26th at 1 p.m. This field trip includes 2 locations. We'll be meeting at 1 p.m. in the parking lot on Hamilton Parkway near the skate park. And then we'll all head over to Marin Valley Drive at 2 p.m. There's information on the project webpage about this field trip, and including links to, directions online to help you find your way to our meeting locations. Should not be a strenuous hike, but it does include hiking on uneven ground. We'd love it if you could carpool, if you can. Additional outreach includes a webinar that we are planning with Cal Poly. It's with their fire and with their fuels and vegetation management training program. They're a great partner. They're doing a lot of work all around the state with various agencies who are doing work, especially under the Cal VTP. They're really highlighting that work. It's funded through Cal Fire's Healthy Forest Initiative and the California Climate Initiative. We are planning a webinar on January 19th at 10 a.m. And we're really going to be highlighting the complexities of planning for wildfire resilience in the coastal zone. So this is really geared towards coastal Marin, all of those issues with the Coastal Act, sensitive natural resources, fire risk, evacuations, etc. We're working with not only Cal Poly to talk about these issues, but also Marin County Community Development Agency, who will be speaking as well. And we'll be talking about the evacuation planning. We'll be talking about what sensitive resources we're thinking about when we're working in the coastal zone and what the kind of regulatory landscape looks like. So we invite all of you to attend, and this webinar is going to be public, and also we'll be inviting a lot of professionals from around the state. Cal Poly has a listserv of about 2,000 professionals who are working on these kinds of issues, and they'll all be invited to attend. Typically their webinars have maybe between 100 and 200 attendees, and so they've gotten very popular, and it's a great way to spread the word on this kind of planning effort. So our chipper program is still going. We started in mid-May and will continue through mid-November. We've definitely seen an increase over last year's activities. We have about 3,647 pickups done as of a couple of weeks ago, over 11,000 cubic yards of material removed. And what we're seeing is that residents are really looking to their defensible space inspection reports to help identify what kind of vegetation management to do around their homes, and then calling us up to pick up those materials. So that's been a really successful year so far, and Fire Foundry has been engaged and working really closely with our vegetation management, Stephen Peters, to coordinate especially the larger pickups. Our grant program has been very popular this year as well. And so we're very happy to have our new grant specialist on board. You know him, Josh Hampshire, our former Grizzly Corps fellow. He is working as a grant specialist now, and we're very thrilled to have him. It has been a very busy season, even just since July 1st with this program. So we've awarded nearly 200 resident grants to residents, distributing almost $500,000, and there are many more in the queue. So at this point, because this program has been so popular, we're seeing that pretty much the entire budget has been allocated at this point. So we're not accepting additional applications. We are finding that for every dollar we're distributing through the grant program, residents are spending another about $6.50 on home hardening and defensible space activities. So we're seeing this benefit really leveraged toward much bigger impact in Marin County, and we're really thrilled to see that work get done. As we're winding down for this season, we will be working with Josh and various member agencies to think through how to further fine-tune the program and make sure that the dollars are going where they're really needed to make the most impact. I want to share a couple of before and after photos. The Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break has been very active, as I'm sure you're aware. Here are some before and after photos showing on Iron Springs Road, a lot of non-native invasive vegetation getting removed and really reducing the potential for fire risk for folks driving along this road. And then here's a great example of, right next to homes, the difference between the before and after, and really 99% of this vegetation removed is non-native invasive broom. I also want to highlight that for this work, we have, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share a different screen. In the staff report, we have tables showing approximations for how much is getting implemented each month. And I've been providing this monthly with the staff reports for a while now. This time around, I've kind of reorganized so that it's by zone. So we start off with JPA wide, and then we go through for West Marin. Obviously, there's just one project going on in West Marin, Central Marin, Novato, through the other zones. And so this is a great resource to help you understand what exactly is being implemented. And I'm hoping to improve that as we develop our GIS program. And so we'll have much more accurate spatial ways of reporting this work. So I'm looking forward to that. And we've been working with Green Info Network to dive into a needs assessment with our member agencies and our partners to really dig into what is needed to start building our GIS program. And then I'd like to introduce two new vegetation management specialists. We are absolutely thrilled to now have 3 vegetation management specialists. You already know Stephen Peters, but we also have Ted Briggs and Jacob Dadman here to introduce themselves. Bringing on this new staff is really key to supporting project implementation in the field, the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break. There's so much going on in the field. We have a lot of other member agencies working on complex projects that could use some assistance as well. In addition, Ted and Jacob are going to be helping with planning activities, with work plan development, things like that. So we're going to keep them very busy. And I'd like to invite them to just say a few words about themselves, maybe at the podium. And why don't we start with Ted or Jake, whoever's standing up first. Great. Thanks so much.
Great. So my name is Ted Briggs. Jacob and I started on the same day. We're 2.5 weeks into this, and I know I'm very excited to be here. So I was thinking about what it is I was going to say, and it occurred to me that I first became aware of wildfires and what they were when I was 17 years old, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. When I was working for the Forest Service on a trail crew in the Lake Tahoe Basin. So while I was there, part of our crew disappeared in the evening or one night and came back 2 weeks later with wild tales of helping run a fire camp and sleeping in paper sleeping bags. And they came back with some really cool bright yellow Nomex. And I thought I need to get me some of that. So that then led to me starting as a volunteer firefighter, as many of us get that disease. And that led me to working for 5 years as a structure firefighter EMT across Northern California. Ended up at Cal Poly, got a degree in natural resources management, went into the environmental planning industry, worked on CEQA and NEPA documents, did biotic surveys and soil surveys and things like that. And then I spent the next 25 years doing something completely different. I worked in the procurement and supply chain profession for lots of different, in many different industries and many different places, including 6 years working in the Arctic, working for BP in the oil fields, where, by the way, I also served as a logistics section chief on an incident management team while I was there. And then things changed as it did for many people in the North Bay, starting with the 2017 fires. So I live in Santa Rosa. Our house was fine, but many of our friends nearly died. Many of them lost their homes, and they spent quite a bit of time with us trying to figure out what it is that they're going to do next. And that got me thinking about what it is I really wanted to do, and maybe whether I had lost my way. And so I ended up enlisting in the California State Guard and currently serve as a military wildland firefighter, and thought, well, that's great, but it's still not enough. And that's why I'm here today. So I'm very pleased to be able to bring my environmental background, my love of the outdoors, and my fire service disease and affliction to this venture. And I can't believe that I get paid for hiking around outside. So I'm really excited to be here. So before I hand the mic over to Jacob, do you have any questions for me?
I think we're very fortunate that you're working with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Dadman. I do not have 25 years of procurement experience due to the fact that I'm not 25. But I first, like a lot of people in California, my first experience with fire was when I was very little. I grew up in San Diego, and in 2003, there were some pretty bad East County fires that took me out of school. And after that, I really growing up, really had this feeling of what it was like to be in California in fire country. And I was lucky enough to be able to go to a school that really supported me in delving into the environmental policy and fire world. I worked with really amazing researchers like Scott Stevens and Rob York on a variety of fire ecology and fire policy issues. I was very fortunate enough to teach a class to my fellow undergraduates on California traditional ecological knowledge and really how Indigenous peoples' relationship with the landscapes and natural resources around them in California create a positive vision for how we as humans can interact and manage with the ecosystems around us in a way that doesn't just minimize the harm that we do to ecosystems, but positively improves them. So that was really inspiring and really impactful for me in that stage of my life. After that, I was fortunate enough to work on a field crew in the Plumas National Forest through the Stevens Lab in Berkeley Forests. And I was doing post-fire severity and recovery in the Dixie Fire Scar, which was a very impactful experience for me. You know, 1 million acres of fire scar, really remarkable. We drove from Lake Oroville to Lassen National Park. It's a 3-hour drive and you're in the same fire scar the whole time. It was remarkable, both in the sense that it seemed like the massive scale of what we need to do really hit you over and over, of just ridgeline after ridgeline after ridgeline. But also the places where fuels management, prescribed fire, or even just the sort of random topography of the forest really moderated those fire effects. We saw places that where, you know, they had done one treatment and then it had subsequently burned 5 times, and then burned in the Dixie at minimal severity. And it meant that, like, you know, you treat it once 20 years ago, you let the natural fires burn and then you're good to go. So that was really enlightening for me. But right before this, I was working for the city and county of San Francisco, bit of a different track on street safety. And I did a lot of project management and data analysis for that, and as well as some urban biodiversity project planning. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited on the intersection of ecological restoration and fire and fuels reduction work. And yeah, it seems like it's an amazing organization, and I'm happy to be here. Also, any questions for me?
Any questions? Great, welcome.
Thank you.
Jacob. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you.
And
It's
if I
wonderful.
could just add really quick, I warned you guys that we had a tremendous number of high quality candidates. So you can imagine if these are the 2 that we selected, you'll see why we selected them.
And I'd love to just add that we also have Andrea Salinas, our last year's Grizzly Corps fellow, joining us for a 2nd year. And so we're really thrilled to have her as part of the team for another year. And she's really diving into a lot of great work, including GIS and helping us set up our GIS program. So thank you, Jacob and Ted, and happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board? Bruce.
Hi, Ann. Welcome, gentlemen. Your background speaks for itself and your enthusiasm is very clear. You've landed in the right spot. We're getting things done here. So thanks. Ann, a question. You mentioned that we're not taking any more grants, but I've had conversations with the numerous citizens in the county who have yet to have started their defensible space work, who have had prescriptions, who have home hardening yet to do. And can you please clarify? I believe that the policy is that if they do the work themselves, keep their receipts, that they will be able to qualify for a matching grant when funds become available. Can you please clarify what our policy is?
I think generally, if there is funding and the inspection is under a year old, then we would try to fund their work. However, we are out of funds for this fiscal year. And so, you know, that is the price of having a really popular program that's doing great work. So I think that the demand is something that we're going to need to consider as we plan for the next fiscal year. If Josh Hampshire or others are available to speak on the grant program, I would invite them to add additional comments.
Well, and I think I may save Josh from popping in.
Sure.
Yes, if once we reignite the grant program July 1 next fiscal, if their inspection report is within 1 year old, they'll be able to apply in next fiscal years. However, we are becoming more targeted, and some items that were eligible for this grant cycle may not be eligible next grant cycle.
Okay, the question that they asked me is, should I wait to do the work? And I said, don't wait, really, if it needs to be done. But in regards to compensation, I really wasn't able to answer their question. So at some point then, a recommendation that we could put some thought as to what messaging we provide citizens in regards to the grants program. It would be helpful to me, and I'm sure others are talking to their neighbors and friends, and so it would be helpful. Mark and Ann, if you could provide some clarification as to what advice do we give residents who ask, should we start now? If we do it now, could we be compensated?
Well, Josh is spearheading an effort to define what those prioritized efforts are going to be. Right now, what's on our website is you can apply you can put in an application now that we could hold in queue for next year. However, the items currently may not be available until we work through the process of the prioritization. We can't get any more specific than that. When we do have the specifics, we will put it on.
Thank you. I don't want to put you in a difficult position. I'll refer them to the website, and if they have any questions, I'll have them contact Josh.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. I know that we're looking at prioritizing, and the last meeting, I think you talked a little bit about, it looked like more home hardening things rather than D-space. Maybe that's just the hint that you gave us, because there were certain things that may not have the impact in the home hardening. But I'm just wondering.
This one seems to be okay.
Microphone coming.
Yeah, come join me, Barbara.
Just, can we consider for next year, considering instead of 800,000 going as high as $1 million with our prioritization? Because here we are, and I know the website says the funds are exhausted, and I understand that. And I think the prioritization is a good idea now that we're in third year, but let's consider that.
We can absolutely pass that along to the advisory technical committee and the ops committee, because they're the ones who set that budget.
Thank you.
And just a question about the prioritization. What data are we relying on to prioritize?
So we are using information and data from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, the research they've done, what creates home ignitability. We are using the data that we are collecting from our DSI inspections combined with Willow Labs, which is doing parcel level fire risk modeling. And that'll allow us to identify the key risks that are actually destroying homes. And it's going to be a blend to kind of circle back to Barbara's comment. There will be some home hardening items that will be lower prioritized than zone 0. We're not dividing home hardening from D-space. We're identifying the most specific from home hardening to zone 0 to zone 1.
Great. Any other questions? Martina, public comment on this item. Sorry, you're multitasking.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand if you're joining us by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself. And there are currently no hands for comment.
Thank you. Let's bring this back to the board for any further discussion. Anybody? Right, moving on to item number 8, action items. 8A, fiscal year 2021-22 financial audit. Executive Officer Mark Brown will provide the staff report on this item.
Yeah, I'll kick it off, and then I'm going to pass it off to Ahmad from Badawi, excuse me, I'm sorry, Badawi Associates. But we are very pleased with the audit. It's very clean. And it also showed that we reacted to the finding that we had from our first audit, and that was the levels of separation for decisions for paying bills. And so that was not a finding for this one. So it shows that we adjusted to that and moved on. But with that, I'll pass it off to Ahmed.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me to your meeting. So allow me to share my screen. I have a small presentation for you. There we go. Are you, oops.
We can see your screen.
You cannot.
We can.
Okay, good. Let me make sure you can see. Let me move this out of the way. Sorry about that. And go into presentation. All right. Okay, you can still see my screen, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So today I'll present to you the results of our audit for fiscal year 2023 for the Marine Wildfire Prevention Authority. What I'm going to cover today is I'll let you know who the engagement team was, what were our deliverables and the scope of our audit, the areas we emphasized on during our audit process, the type of audit opinion we issued, some of the required communications as your independent auditor, and just a brief overview of some of the new accounting standards. As far as the engagement team is concerned, this was the composition of our engagement team. So we really had a small team consisting of myself as the engagement partner. We had an engagement manager, and we also had a professional staff. We always have a quality control reviewer, and this person's role is reviewing financial statements before they are issued, also reviewing our work, making sure that we adhere to professional standards. So it's part of our quality control system. As far as deliverables, so we were engaged to provide an opinion on the Marine Wildfire Prevention Authority basic financial statements. And then we also provide communication to the governing body, which is what I'm doing today. And we also issue a letter with the same communication, just summarizing the scope of the audit, whether we had any difficulties during our audit, any disagreement with management, and so forth. A management letter, normally when we have findings, and as you probably just heard, that we do not have findings this year, so there is no management letter regarding that. As far as areas of primary audit emphasis, so we had two pretty standard areas that exist in most audits, where we consider them to be areas of higher risk, revenues and receivable and improper revenue recognition. This is by default, we are required to consider those areas to be areas of higher risk. And we rely on confirmations. Obviously, in the case of the authority, Measure C is the main revenue source, and that's we are able to easily confirm that. So it's a confirmation from a third party that we reconcile to the authority's accounting records. And then management override of controls. This is a risk that always exists. Management are the one responsible for designing controls and overseeing them, and they are probably in a position to override them sometimes. So we just have to consider that when we plan our audit and when we conduct our audit. We test journal entries prepared by management. We make sure that we assign experienced staff to more complex areas. And then we evaluate the business rationale for any unusual transactions. Of course, we do many other procedures, but I just wanted to highlight a few of them. As far as our auditor's report, so we have issued an unmodified opinion that in simple terms mean it's a clean opinion. And the opinion state the standards that we followed, the generally accepted auditing standards. And the unmodified opinions means that we believe that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, that all accounting policies have been consistently applied, that all estimates are reasonable, and that all disclosures are properly reflected in the financial statements. I wanted to just provide to you some of the required communications. So this is a summary of the responsibilities of both parties in this process, the audit firm and management of the Marine Wildfire Authority. Our responsibility is to mainly express an opinion on the financial statements. We're also responsible for evaluating the internal control over financial reporting, evaluating compliance with laws and regulations, ensuring that the financial statements are clear and transparent, and then finally communicating with the governing body, with the board. Management have a lot of responsibilities in this process, so management is still ultimately responsible for the financials. Our audits only provide reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, and does not relieve management from its responsibility for the completeness and accuracy of the financials. Management is also responsible for establishing and maintaining internal control over financial reporting, making all financial records available to us, establish controls that will prevent and detect fraud, inform us of any known and suspected fraud, comply with laws and regulations, and take corrective action on any audit findings. As far as independence, we are required to maintain our independence. This is solely our responsibility. We are always evaluating our relationships with our clients. We circulate a list of all of our clients to our personnel and make sure that they identify any direct or indirect relations with any of those clients or the client's employees. And we make sure that take those people off the specific audits. We also evaluate any additional service that we offer our clients to make sure that they don't impair our independence. We determined that we remained and maintained our independence during this audit. Pleased to say that there was no disagreement with management. There was no material weaknesses identified. Actually, I'm sorry, I did forget to take this out, but this was removed. So my apology for still having this here about the significant deficiency, the lack of segregation of duty. So that was from last year. And so my apology for that. I think other than that, we also have requested certain representations from management before we issued our financial statements. So this is a letter from management stating to us that they have disclosed all known facts, that they have recorded all transactions, that they're not aware of any fraud, and so on. We're also pleased to say that we encountered no difficulties during our audit. We have not become aware of any incident of fraud or illegal act. And I think other than that, just a summary of the new accounting standards that are coming your way. I mean, doesn't automatically mean that they will apply to the authority, but it's definitely something that we discuss with management and assist them with determining the applicability of those. I think other than that, I think it was fairly straightforward and issued an unmodified opinion as expected. Of course, I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions from the board? Nobody. Mark, can you see if there's public comment on this item?
Yes, if anybody in the audience would like to have any public comment or anyone online, please raise your hand. And no hands raised.
Thank you. Let's bring this back to the board for discussion and a motion. How about a motion, guys?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion by Barry, second by Fred. Mark, can you please call the roll?
You bet. Director Kohler from Fairfax.
You can't just yell because it's being recorded. Yes.
And I'm just going to go down the line, that line there, so we can just pass the mic down. Director Paulson.
Yes.
Director
Yes.
Casisa.
Yes.
Director Rodoni.
Yes.
Director McMillan.
Yes.
Director Goins.
Yes.
Director Kurtz.
Yes.
Director Shea. Yes from Shea. Director Feynman.
Yes.
Director Finn.
Yes.
And Director White.
Yes.
And Director Murray.
Yes.
We had you first, right? Oh, sorry, Director Evergettis. Thank you. We have unanimous support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8B, evacuation ingress egress risk assessment. Executive Officer Mark Brown will provide the staff report on this item. Mark.
And this is what I was excited about today, is this first of its kind evacuation ingress egress risk assessment. Truly was a project that was envisioned before the MWPA ever got off the ground. And we've been pretty flexible with it, because when we first started, part of what we wanted out of this was an evacuation management platform, but then we found Zonehaven came out and was able to provide that evacuation management platform. So we adjusted the project before we ever started it to not include that. And then we just kind of grew as we went. And I'm going to steal a line from Director Donahue, and that this was not just science for the sake of science. We went through this so that we can have information and data to help drive the work that we are doing. And we are already doing that. We had excellent involvement from our technical advisory team all the way through, and through each iteration. Because of that excellent involvement, we were able to make it even better. We had extremely high expectations for this project. And in my opinion, even with those extremely high expectations, we exceeded them. This project exceeded those expectations. Now it's going to be up to our member agencies in the MWPA to make sure that we use this tool to continue to get our return on investment. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Charlotte and Tammy.
Good afternoon, directors and members of the public. My name is Charlotte Jourdain. I'm an independent contractor for MWPA, and next to me are Tammy Levetso and Lyle Shinkin from Sonoma Technology. I just have a few slides to go through, and then I'll pass it to them for the meat of this presentation. Okay, so the actions before the board today is after receiving today's presentation and the report that was attached to the agenda, we ask that you consider approving the release of the report and the accompanying GIS platform displaying the evacuation risk or difficulty ratings and maps to the public. And we also ask that you approve the release of the ratings and any other related data layers to evacuation stakeholders, including the Transportation Authority of Marin, the Departments of Public Works, Community Development Agency, law enforcement, and all others as determined appropriate by the Executive Director. I'll go over the goals of this project as a reminder. The goals were to create a planning tool, adding data and science to our member agencies' expertise and other evacuation stakeholders' expertise to prepare the county for evacuations. This is not an incident management tool. This is strictly a planning tool. And as Mark mentioned, we had the support, the guidance, and the feedback from technical advisory team representing all 5 zones of the JPA throughout this project. The tool will help our member agencies and other stakeholders to identify the actions and projects that can mitigate risk associated with future evacuations, assess the benefits of these projects, including dual impact projects. And by that, I mean projects that speak to both evacuation safety, but also other types of safety, could be traffic safety or other impacts. Prioritize projects. So we know some of our member agencies have more work than they can take on in any one year. So this tool can be used to help them decide where to first get started for the greatest impact. And then the tool is already being used to communicate clearly and effectively with the public about the risk and mitigation strategies being implemented. The tool and the report presented today illustrate current conditions, and it includes all the already approved MWPA projects that were submitted through the various work plans you have approved. So it will also be used to track progress addressing risk. So the action item regarding the release of the tool to the public, in preparation for your approval, we will clearly display a message referring to emergency.marincounty.org for evacuation information during an incident on the GIS platform. So there's no confusion that this tool is solely for planning purposes. We'll be adding a disclaimer regarding the use of the tool as a planning tool only. We will post the current condition report and a link to access the platform on the MWPA website. We will work with Sonoma Technology to create a story map similar to the one that was created for the CWPP. And of course, we will go through the social media posts and campaign that usually accompany this type of disclosure. We will formally distribute the report to all relevant evacuation partners, including an executive summary and some one-pager information sheets. We will continue to proactively reach out to the practitioners and planners to help them familiarize and train them on the use of the tool to provide support in evaluating current and any new projects. All the projects submitted under the next work plan will be vetted and prioritized using this tool. MWPA staff will wait for the directors or member agencies' request to present this assessment to other governing bodies. And the tool, as I mentioned, already includes a tutorial, but MWPA will respond to public inquiries regarding its use or navigation. The last action item before you is to approve the sharing of data layers with other evacuation stakeholders, not only our member agencies. So staff requests approval to share difficulty and other risk layers with all evacuation stakeholders that are not just member agencies. Sharing this information will help our partners comply with regulations, plan and prepare, apply for grant funding, etc. There's a lot of contextual data and other sort of byproduct or outputs of this tool that can be helpful to a lot of our partners. And again, evacuation is interdisciplinary, and the only way we'll make progress is by all sharing the data we've put together. So now I'll turn it over to Tammy for a little bit of a more in-depth dive into what the tool is about.
Thanks, Charlotte. It's really fun to be here in person, by the way, after all these meetings remote. Okay, so today I'm just going to give a high-level overview of what the project was about, because I know you've heard several of these presentations now, and then I'll really give also a high-level overview of the main work products that came out of the study. So as you recall, we started out by performing a pretty comprehensive literature review. We looked at, I don't know, more than 50 different documents, peer review and reports and so forth. And the reason we wanted to do that was to really understand the current state of the science for wildfire evacuation. And then what are the risk factors that contribute to civilian fatalities during evacuations? And so, as you know, I've presented the results of that. It was a fascinating literature review. We got a lot of really good information out of that. And the next step was then to do a data review of all the different data sources that were available for the county. And we did that and found that we had all the data that we needed to be able to perform the study, which is important. And we also were very fortunate in Marin. We have a wealth of really good, high quality, spatially resolved data. And I think that made the results of this study really robust. I think it really contributed to the quality of what we were able to produce. So from there, as you recall, we did fire modeling. We worked with UC Berkeley. Well, actually, fire modeling, we worked with REACS Engineering and Spatial Informatics Group. We simulated several different fires on the landscape under different weather conditions. We married the fire model with the communications and decision-making model, which basically estimates the amount of time it takes for people to mobilize once they perceive risk. And then we worked with UC Berkeley and we did traffic modeling using a model that they had developed that, you know, once the vehicles are on the roadway, how long does it take them to get to a safe location? And we did, as you recall, we did the traffic modeling for 5 different test areas. And then we used that information to identify, you know, common themes and patterns, and then expanded the results of that analysis to the county. And so that part of the project really involved a pretty intensive GIS, geospatial analysis work. And so what you'll see today are the results of the final stage of the study. So, you know, what we found in going through the modeling process and the analysis is that from a mitigation standpoint, we kind of came up with these 3 different bins of mitigation actions, I guess you could call them. And so some of those actions relate to fire and fuels management. So, you know, fuel reduction along evacuation routes, that type of thing. We also looked at the characteristics of the roadways in Marin. And as you know, we have a lot of, you know, pretty complex narrow, winding roads. And we looked at, you know, near road flame lengths and so forth, and came up with that second bin, the roadway and infrastructure management mitigation actions. And then lastly, as you can imagine, there's a whole human element to evacuation, right? But people have to perceive a risk, decide if they're going to stay or go. And so the third bucket of mitigation actions relates to communications, outreach, notifications, and so forth. I'm not going to go into great detail on the GIS analysis that we did because it would take me probably 5 hours to explain. But essentially, through the literature review and the data review, we compiled a whole bunch of maps of risk factor data. And we took those maps and did a geospatial analysis that we call a suitability analysis, where you can rank each risk factor, and then you can combine and weight them to come up with a composite risk metric, basically. And so we did this for a lot of different risk factors, as you'll see in a couple slides. And really what we sort of arrived at is, if you think about it, you have some risk factors that are fairly easy to mitigate. So fuels, for example, that's, relatively straightforward, easy to reduce fuel loads. And then you have other risk factors that would be costly, impossible in some cases to mitigate. And so we separated the risk factors into what we're calling fixed risk factor, don't make me say that fast, and variable risk factors. And the variable risk factors are the more mitigatable risk factors. And so just to go through these three categories of risk factors, and I'll show the evacuation difficulty maps that resulted. What you're looking at here is for the fire and fuels category. We looked at several variable risk factors, which are listed in yellow. So these are things, like I said, that, would be fairly straightforward to mitigate. I mean, they might, be costly, but it can be done. Flame length, for example, reducing fuel loads reduces flame length. So that's a pretty easy one. And then you have other fixed risk factors that are listed in white font that would be very challenging or impossible to mitigate. And so we took all of these different map layers. Each one of these risk factors represents a map layer, and we combined them and weighted them to arrive at what we are calling difficulty scores. So what you're looking at here is the resulting map from the fire and fuels risk factor data set. And in the map, the dark areas represent relatively higher risk than the yellow areas. And we've set up a GIS, GeoHub, online navigatable website where you can really drill into these maps and look at specific, neighborhoods and communities and so forth. And similarly, for the road and infrastructure bin, we again identified fixed and variable risk factors. This is showing you the list here, which is quite long. And we were able to generate a risk factor ranking for every road segment in the county. And so that's what you're looking at in the map here. We are planning, we did this analysis for both paved and fire roads. For when we display the maps, we're going to make sure that there's a distinction between those. Right now, everything is sort of color coded the same, but this is really what, when we started this project, I remember Mark saying, you know what I want? I want a map of risk, relative risk ranking for every roadway in the county. And I thought, okay, we can do that. We can do it. And now you have it. And then for the third bucket, the communication and outreach, we again fixed and variable risk factors listed here. And I would say that the literature review was really, really interesting. And in terms of identifying certain demographic characteristics that contribute to people's perception of risk. And we learned a lot through that. And so some of the data layers that you see here reflect, what we learned in the literature review. And again, we combined these and we came out with a composite risk score for the communication segment. And so, as I mentioned, we've set up a GeoHub GIS tool. It has these map layers organized into the 3 different categories. This site also has all of the project documentation that we've produced to date. So the results of the literature review, the report, I think the proposal is even still there, the data review document. So there's really a lot of good information here. The maps, I will say, are a little bit complicated to navigate and sort of wrap your head around at first, but hopefully we've laid things out here in a way that we've provided, some good instructions and explanations. And the neat thing about these maps is that they link to the sections of the report that talk about how they were developed. So there's documentation also behind the maps. And with that, I was going to pass it over to Mark, but I can mouse for you if you need me to.
Yeah, we actually kind of rehearsed this earlier so that I wanted to give an example how we are already using the tool. And Tammy's right, the data in this is immense. There's so many layers that it actually could be overwhelming until you kind of dig into it a little bit. And then you start finding layers that really speak to you. So on this example that we're showing, we have 2 layers displayed. One layer is the layer of the projects that we've planned and have already started implementing. And the other layer is the flame length. Of course, I'm going to focus on the flame length given my background. But this was telling us the fire line intensities. And it's kind of hard to see on the display, but what we saw where she has her cursor right now is that our planners already did a really good job, and we did use modeling to shape the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, and it's aligning with areas that we see the greatest amount of flame lengths. And then if you want to kind of pan down south for me a little bit, you're going to see that project that has very straight shapes. That's the San Rafael San Anselmo fuel reduction zone. It just so happens that that's where we have significant fire intensities displayed within our data. But just to the north of that shape, you see significant flame lengths that we don't really have a project designed there yet. And now you can see why it would be really easy for us to connect the San Rafael San Anselmo fuel reduction zone to the northwest with the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break and make it even that much better. So that's just an example of where it's validated what we've done, but it's also identifying spots where we can get better. And I'll just add that and I think we've probably gone far enough with our little show and tell, but we're already using it in West Marin for the planning project for Inverness, Bolinas, Muir Beach, and Stinson Beach. They're already using this tool and digging into it. And we've been able to share it with some of our partners at OEM. We have Stephen Torrenson here. We have Leslie Lacko from the Community Development Agency, and Jesse Perry from Stinson Beach Fire that are prepared to kind of give us a couple comments of how excited they are about being able to use it.
Sorry, I just wanted to close that off and comment on something Tammy said. So for the member agencies and partner stakeholders, the fire roads will be part of the tool that they can use for planning fire road enhancements and other mitigation projects. For the public, we do not want a message that fire roads are part of the evacuation road system. So we will be hiding that network of road when we get your approval to release to the public. Just wanted to clarify. And then very briefly on the next steps here, this project we are at 64% of budget expanded to date. And we propose to return to your board for the last 2 tasks under Sonoma Technologies contract for this project, which initially included the development of an application for planners to evaluate the impact of their project in a sort of self-help manner. We think it's too dense. There's too much data, too much information to navigate to launch into something that would be self-help at the moment. So we were reserving the remaining budget to look at alternatives. We also would like to work with Sonoma Technology and the Green Info Network to ensure that all the data that is part of the underlying tool is updated as necessary, and we track the evolution of the current conditions as we implement project towards greater fire adaptation. And finally, we will be speaking with Sonoma Technology to discuss the integration of new layers of risk data as they become available, such as the private parcel risk scores developed by Willow Labs, and other tools other data as it becomes available. Now I'll pass that on to.
As we navigate batteries dying in our microphones, I'm going to ask Stephen Torrance to talk about how how an Office of Emergency Management may be able to use this information.
Thank you all. Good afternoon, everyone. Stephen Torrance, Director of Emergency Management for the Marin County Fire Department. Thank you for being here. We did get a chance to actually work with MWPA on this project, getting a chance to kind of see how this project is coming together. And just to kind of highlight what was just mentioned, there is a lot of good data here. And as we continue to digest how we can use it, there's a lot of different spaces that we can see the value of this system. Looking at the fixed and variable factors that go along with this, highlighting what we can do with the variable factors up front, looking at the collision points, the points of where there's stop signs, that allows for us to be able to see how we should be able to, look at an evacuation warning and say, well, we have a lot of data that shows that this is a high density area. It's going to be a lot more difficult for us to do evacuations. Therefore, maybe we should move into an evacuation order instead of starting with an evacuation warning, because we have this data that's available to us. Additionally, I'll highlight the last area specifically that we just talked about. The subscription data, the linguistics, the demographics that is coming along with this information is invaluable to us. Being able to go back and see how we can develop new campaigns and actually take this information to figure out how we can actually develop new plans that are specifically tailored to regions of the community is something that's going to take us to the next level. Historically, a lot of the times with emergency managers, we are cookie cutter, taking a cookie cutter plan and saying, this is what X county did, this is what X jurisdiction did, and we just check the box and say we did it. And for us, we'd like to move to a data-driven approach, and this technology is actually getting us closer and closer to be able to develop systems that allow for us to really look at the linguistics of an area. Should we be sending out alerts in certain languages, but also just kind of getting down into the nitty-gritty about how many people are actually subscribed in certain areas. That is very impactful. We can look at our data, but we can also cross-reference it with this data as well. The cellular data was actually very important for us as well. Being able to see how we can actually, what carriers are available to the point where we can truly get an understanding of cell phone coverage. As we know, specifically in West Marin and a lot of our canyon, cell phone coverage is one of the big things that we are asked when we're out in the community. So being able to go out and hear how this information is being validated, but also cross-referencing that with our existing plans, we definitely supported and appreciated that we were able to be brought into this discussion, and we definitely see this as a value not only to MWPA but the members of the community and our office specifically. So thank you, Mark, and the team for being able to bring us to the table.
Thanks, Stephen. Really appreciate you coming. And Leslie Lacko from Community Development Agency, I do want to point out before she gives us her thoughts, she was a vital member for us through the technical advisory team, and her feedback through the process was phenomenal. And we were able to present to her and Jeremy from CDA the kind of the tutorial that we've been given member agencies, and you can literally see the gears turning in their heads. And so I said, hey, I know it's only 2 days notice, but can you come talk about how you think you're going to use it? So Leslie, all you.
Yeah. And, I think Jeremy would really like to be able to talk about this a bit too. And he just got on Is it possible to bring him into this? I know I got an invite to join. Do you see him on there? So Jeremy is our planning director with CDA. We're the community development agency. We review a lot of projects and Jeremy's in charge of it all. And there he is. Great. I'm going to let him take it.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Just want to really congratulate the team and let everybody know how excited we are to work with this new tool. It's going to be so important for us. We work closely with communities throughout the Marin County, and we work in areas where people are concerned about evacuation routes, concerned about fire and other disasters, and sometimes are concerned about receiving accurate information. And so being able to use a tool like this, not just in the moment, but also for planning in advance of development projects and other kinds of projects, as well as capital improvements, is really, I think, going to make a huge difference for our operations. So this is just a great way of trying to connect so much of the information that we have out there and make it more possible for us to think long term and address some of the evacuation and housing issues, which are foremost on so many people's minds. So congratulations and thank you so much for all this great work.
Really appreciate it, Jeremy. And then Chief Perry from Stinson Beach Fire is probably one of our first people to actually start being able to use it while they scope out projects for the 24-25 work plan. Jesse,
Thank you, Mark. Much appreciated. We're working on a big project out in the West Zone with all the coastal agencies working to get a environmental compliance plan together as part of one of our core projects this year. We're in the polygon drawing phase of identifying possible projects throughout the next potentially 20 years of the MWPA, and having some of these data layers to be able to cross-reference with our polygons is really making us or allowing us to have really critical informed decisions to identify the best projects that we could put our money towards. As you all know, in the West Zone, we have a limited structure count, so we have limited funding. So it's really important for us to identify these areas and put it to get the best bang for our buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And the last thing I'll add is many of you who subscribe to the IJ probably saw the acceptance of the Google traffic study in Mill Valley. And we know Mill Valley has been leading the space in evacuations for quite some time. And the evacuation study that they did with Google is a lot of if this, then that. If they open up this roadway, what is the evacuation going to do? If they make Hamilton Parkway two-way, because it's normally one way past the public safety building, what's it going to do the evacuation times? And that's really allowed them to manipulate their evacuation planning. Well, we're really close to having that tool available to us through Zonehaven. And so it's actually moving really quick on how that we may be able to have this. And today, Chief Navarro from Mill Valley PD was addressing the police chiefs at their Police Chiefs Association, saying, hey, this is a potential tool that's coming from Zonehaven that Measure C can fund if that is a tool that you guys want to use. If they're agreeable to that, then next month, myself and Zonehaven will make a presentation to the police chiefs and we'll be able to add that tool and we'll be able to get the same level of strategy work that Mill Valley did with Google for our entire communities. And with that, I'll pass it back to the team unless they're done.
I'm done unless there are any questions.
That's all incredibly impressive and such a great tool, not only for right now, but for, the next 15 or 20 years. So thank you all for doing that. It's really terrific. Board questions, Barbara.
Thank you, Martina. So going back to that one, and I think I just heard Chief Perry kind of talk about how they'll be using this. My hope, and I have a few questions, so please be patient with me, is that this tool will be used by the Advisory Technical Committee and the Operations Committee as they plan for the next work plan. And at least looking at that slide, and I'm selfish, it sure looks to me like we could expand the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break for that northwest area, connecting between the San Anselmo project, and there's a 100-acre project that I've been really interested in that I just wrote Michael St. John about. But it sure seems to me like that's just one thing that I see because I'm thinking about Fairfax. So I saw you nodding your head. I think the goal is that you will work with ATC and ops using this tool so that they can kind of ground truth, in a sense, some of what they're planning to do, which is based on really good knowledge. But this will be another tool in the toolbox. That's correct?
That is correct. In fact, the very first advisory technical committee will be a test drive, not a test drive, but a presentation on the evacuation ingress risk assessment, as well as we've already been starting to train many of our member agencies how to use it. So that training will be ongoing. And in the work plan portal, we are discussing having a checkbox of whether or not this tool was used for the design of that proposed project.
Okay, that's great. The other thing I noticed in the maps, in the report, and obviously I'm not looking at the granularity, I'm sure that each of those maps, as you drill down, have the street names, etc.
Correct.
Okay, because I couldn't tell them.
Yeah.
And the second piece, and I asked you some of these questions beforehand, is you know, Todd Landau, Chief Tyler, and others are very knowledgeable about where the pinch points are in the county. And I asked if they were consulted. Did they learn things that they didn't know by looking at this tool?
Absolutely.
Okay, so they learned, for example, some areas that they may have thought were kind of a pinch point may not have been, where others they may have realized they're much more significant than what they thought.
Correct. And I'll use an example that Todd Lando pointed out. We really dug into the Kent Woodlands and some of the data that in there that's caught him by surprise.
Okay, well, I think that really reaffirms why using the tool for the work plan is going to be really helpful. The other thing, so you mentioned that cellular data in West Marin, there's holes. Well, I live in Fairfax. I'm in a dead zone. So I asked Mark before, and there's a lot of areas that you wouldn't think that are dead zones in other parts of the county. So when you did these analyses, did you have the data for the coverage areas for all the various cellular folks, so you were able to integrate that?
Yeah, you want me to take this?
Go for it.
Yeah. So we use data from the FCC for cell phone coverage by provider. There's a limitation with that data set in that it doesn't give you any indication of signal strength. So it's probably showing that there's more coverage than there actually is. It doesn't necessarily identify those, real dead zones. I also live in Fairfax. So
well, excellent.
I speak your language.
Well, so to the extent you were able to, you incorporated those data.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last piece, and we know through the PSPS event we had a few years ago that was about 4 days, at least in Fairfax, that cell towers have only 12-hour battery backup. So the whole county was out. I kept thinking it was my cell phone. No. And I know that those data are hard to get because they're considered confidential. However, PG&E posts on their website outage data. So how are you able to accommodate
we're not going to be able to reach people if we have power out for even 10 hours, probably. So is there anything that you were able to do to the model or to the risk assessment to try to figure out how we deal with that? And I realize that's a complex question. That's my last question.
Yeah, we didn't specifically model that scenario, but I mean, it could be done. You could, make certain assumptions about people receiving late notifications or not receiving them. And that can be built into the modeling as a scenario if you wanted to plan for that, but we didn't specifically look at that. I don't know, Mark, if you want to add anything to that.
I think what I would like to add is that the great thing about the tool that was created is as new and better data becomes available, we have a platform to integrate it into it. And so we can, within reason, go crazy with our data acquisition and turn it into valuable information. Not recommending this, but driving around with the cell phone and seeing where we have coverage or not, we could, if we wanted to create that layer, we could and put it in.
I'm not talking about the dead zones. What I'm talking about is in a real disaster, we're not going to have cell phone coverage, period, in areas. And so how are we able to accommodate figuring out what we're going to do when we're at 10 hours and power's out and there's no cell phone coverage because they only have 12-hour battery backup?
Well, that's where I mean, but we could create that data layer and implement that into that. Since we have the platform for the data to come in, once we acquire that data, then we can integrate that into it.
Okay.
And Mark, I think Stephen would like to add something on that point, if it's all right.
So looking at that data, I think one of the challenges that we do run into is, PSPS events that happened 2017, 2019. They are going to look a lot different now. We do work with PG&E on the front end to get those notifications out. So we do get a 48-hour at minimum notification from them if we are considered what is termed in scope, meaning that they may have something that happens. They will send that notification out, and the Office of Emergency Management, we will be sending out notifications to those areas if it's the entire county to make people aware that cell phone or that energy will be lost in a certain area. So those are some of the things that we do in partnership on the front end. Looking at this map layer, there's a lot of things that we can pull into consideration as we put this together. But for the most part, we want to make sure that we send out those notifications before power goes out. So we don't have to worry about people not getting notifications due to a PSPS event or an EPSS event in those situations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the report, Mayan. Yeah. I do have a couple questions. In terms of like the frequency of updates and the various layers, which of the layers do you feel is going to be the most volatile? And I'll also add in the second question related to that. On the fixed risk factors for the communication difficulty score, how I know you've indicated that it's fixed, but I think all of our jurisdictions are looking at the RENA numbers that we're being presented with, and it doesn't feel very fixed. So I'm wondering how those two come into play.
For your first question about the data layers and which will be most volatile, I guess what you mean by that is which one will need updating the most frequently. I would say the fuels layer, just because of all of the work that's happening. And Alert Marin subscribers, as those subscriptions increase, obviously we'd want to update those. Those are the two that immediately come to mind. And then, as the fuels change, then you rerun a fire behavior model to get the resulting flame lengths and rates of spread, right? Which, if you're modifying your fuels, you want those to go down. So those are two off the top of my head.
Okay. And as far as like our current approach with our RENA numbers in terms of the new developments that are anticipated over the next, how many years do we have? 8 years. where there's anticipation of we'll have a lot new development happening within our jurisdictions. Have you put in those, is that layer taken into consideration?
It's taken into consideration in under current conditions. So for that type of information, we're using parcel data from the county. And so as you know, that data layer is always being updated, right? But you know, it would not be that big of a deal to update that every year or two, or you know, whatever the right frequency is.
Okay. And I guess my follow-on question is, we're doing a lot of work with this in terms of working with our fire departments, which makes a lot of sense. But I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to look at it with our community development departments so that they actually see the current state where we're at today as we're looking at new developments coming on within the county.
And that was a discussion that we had with Jeremy and Leslie yesterday, was to use the relationship with them to help us get connected to the rest of the planning personnel for all of the different cities and towns.
Okay, so that will be underway, because I'm not sure how much the county and the local jurisdictions work, but that'd be great.
Yeah, they've already promised to set us up with that.
Great, perfect. Thank you. Tom.
Looking ahead to tasks 5 and 6, was there anything in tasks 1 through 4 that surprised you, anomalies, discoveries that will change your approach to tasks 5 and 6?
So tasks 5 and 6 are, sorry, I'll go like this, are to, were planned to carry this study forward and to develop a software tool for people to use to look at different scenarios. And currently tasks 5 and 6 are on pause. As Charlotte, I think, mentioned earlier, one of the things that we discovered as through the working with the technical advisory team is that we feel that, you know, the data is so rich and it's kind of complicated. And, you know, there's various skill sets and capacities among the MWPA agencies, and we're not sure that a tool is the right ultimate deliverable. Maybe analysis support might be more effective. So for now, those tasks are on pause.
And just to add to that, a brief example would be, you know, if you're considering an area of the county that has where the risk is primarily driven by fixed risk and there's not a lot of room for mitigation, then the agency that could take on a mitigation project is not the one that initially is considering the area, but it's about coordinating with others, knowing that there's nothing that can be done on the ground. Then we turn to our you know, Office of Emergency Management, communications networks, and so on to mitigate what we can't mitigate in the ground. So that this type of relationship between the stakeholders is also one of the reasons we'd like to pause on task 5 and 6 at the moment, while we consider how everybody builds confidence in the tool, uses the tool, and starts become knowledgeable about different ways of approaching the problems that are revealed.
Any other questions? Yeah, Alexis.
Sorry, can you just clarify? Because what I just heard you say was and thank you so much for all the work, by the way. This is really exciting, and I think everyone's kind of in awe of just the undertaking. But in terms of the deliverable, you're saying maybe a tool isn't the right kind of final product, and maybe it's more analysis support. I mean, can you just elaborate a little bit, like where do you think, you know, first of all, who's currently exploring the tool and how is that going? And what would analysis support actually look like on the ground, not just for fire departments and for MWPA, but I'm really thinking of, you know, how do we prioritize like which of our hilly roads in San Anselmo we're going to remove parking from first, and that kind of stuff, and really making sure it's really at the street level for our public works.
And I'll take this one on. And the steps 5 and 6 was an additional tool and a software application that has not been created as of yet. And that would be in the fire world, where we can actually turn the dial and say, if we make the clearance on this road 50 feet, this is what it's going to do to the fire behavior. Or turn the dial that if we make this roadway no parking, this is what, and so currently that software doesn't exist. However, an opportunity may present itself where it does, and we can combine our data with that. And so the surprise to Director Finn's question for us through task 1, 2, 3, 4 was how incredibly complicated all of this came to be put together, and perhaps us creating that dynamic application was not the best thing for us to do.
Gabe, did you have a question?
I think Alexis had a follow-up.
You have a follow-up? Sorry.
And then can you just explain the kind of Mill Valley tool that is being used with Google? Is that dynamic? It sounded like it was, and I guess part of the question is like, is Mill Valley in a better position than the rest of us? And should we have some friendly
For traffic modeling, yes, they are. However, it is not a dynamic tool. It was dynamic at the time that they were doing the analysis. And then now the report is a static report. What is envisioned to be embedded into Zonehaven would be absolutely, completely dynamic.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Gabe.
Thank you. I guess the first question is maybe a little bit of a recap what Director Feynman and Finn were asking some of the others. So I'm seeing the tool as, broadly predictive, but also a recommender system. So the predictions are, giving us surprises like in Kent Woodlands, and then the recommender system is like, here, you've got a choke point, maybe do something there. I just wanted to confirm, I think this has been answered, but I just wanted to confirm that, having read over the point, one of the sentences that stood out is, given the complexity and the amount of data, Sonoma Technologies assistance is on project by project basis. So I think that's really what you just said. And does that mean, how do we kind of rank what project by project is? Do we go to the model first and see what's really problematic, and then see because it seems like each hot flashpoint or choke point will require its own attempt at seeing if a recommendation can come out of it. So I'm wondering how that's even gleaned, or how that's put together.
Well, the first part is going to start with the advisory technical committee and having them really dig in as they build their specific projects, and then they will dig in, look at the data, and go, wow, this is a spot that we really need to work. However, I do want to mention that this is a first of its kind tool. And so I think how we use this product or how we use this tool is going to grow as we mature with it.
Okay. And second question, I think one of the actions we're supposed to be taking at is, looking at, approving release to the public. And I just wanted to understand if this might have any impact on insurance. For example, have we talked to United policyholders or, some of their cat models or anything to see if this, if you're in a really deep purple area, does that mean you're going to lose your insurance? Uh-oh. Barbara's point.
Nevada Fire used this room last. Just kidding. That is such an awesome question. So as you may remember, when we embarked upon this, we were not sure to what level we wanted to release this data to the community because of fears of property value loss, fears of insurance loss, or fears of people creating an unwarranted fear. And then we started looking back over the last 5 years and how people are consuming it and reacting to this data. The parcel level risk assessment for our community wildfire protection plan has been online for 3 years. Not a single person has piped up and said, you have rated my property as the highest rated risk rating, and I lost my insurance because of that, or my property value has gone down. The latest version of the CAL FIRE fire hazard severity maps were released without a peep. So people are used to seeing this data people are not creating unwarranted fears from it. When it comes to insurance, and I have had conversations with Amy Bach from United Policyholders on this, and the fact of the matter is insurance companies do not care about our data. They care about their data. They acquire their own data and they make their own decisions on their data, not anybody else's. And so that's why staff feels comfortable making this recommendation.
Thank you.
Incredible product. I love this. My question is, in rolling this out to the public, what's your game plan?
The game plan's take it slow, first of all, but it will be on our website when we're ready, that it's going to connect to what we call the Project Hub. The Project Hub has the literature review, data review. It has the proposal itself and what it's supposed to do. It'll have the contextual maps, which are the Senate Bill 99 and the Assembly Bill 747 routes related to evacuation. It's a mandate from the state that we publicly display that. When it comes to this risk map, there's going to be a disclaimer that pops up on the screen that is very clear about what this is and what this is not. And then very much like Marin Map has simple tutorials, and that's basically the plan for the rollout for the public.
So will you have a contact point for questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions, just in terms of using this as a tool. I think this supplements the CWPP and the One TAM Forest Health, so we can go through all three of those documents to enhance the ATC and the work plan and the focus work, correct?
That is correct. And it also, the more data that we have behind our grant applications as we go to the state and federal agencies, the better our proposals are.
Okay. And then I'm wondering, and I know I've asked you this before, I still don't understand it. Why no fire suppression is included in the modeling, and why there's no modeling of buildings catching on fire and spreading?
So I'll take the first question, and there's two reasons for why no suppression is assumed. Is that, first of all, that the industry standard is to, in fire behavior modeling, that it is the standard to assume no suppression. And I'll go back to my incident management team world when I was the operations section chief and we had a fire behavior analyst. All the predictions they gave us assumed no suppression activities. We are working at creating a rating of an area's wildland urban interface response capabilities. However, you assume that it's one fire, you assume that everything's in quarters if you were to take suppression into account. So that's why we assume the worst case scenario and plan to the worst case scenario. And then when it comes to fire spread through the built environment, until a couple of months ago, nobody had built that model. Fortunately, we are in contact with someone who has built a model that is about 70% successful in accurately predicting fire spread through the home-to-home environment. And they've back tested it to Maui, the Camp Fire, the Marshall Fire, and the Glass Fire. And we just happened to meet with the guy who made that model on Monday. And he showed me a screenshot, a few screenshots, and I was able to, of course, I was curious about the Glass Fire since it went through my neighborhood. And I said, so show me the model that you had for the Glass Fire. And it's remarkable. And so we have a follow-up meeting with him on Monday on how we can integrate his model into our data.
Great. And then on page 28 of the report, there's a map that shows everyone signed up for Alert Marin. And it's by zip code. And I was shocked that so many of the zip codes have 95 to 99% of the people signed up for Alert Marin. And the map does showcase where we need to work harder, or OEM needs to work harder to get more people. But I've been pounding on that issue, and 94957 is 95 to 99%. So that's fantastic, right? I'm not misreading that map. Okay, great. Any other questions? Can we open it up to the public?
Oh. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item 8B, the evacuation ingress egress risk assessment or presentation, please raise your hand in the reactions. We have no public comments here in the room. And it does appear that we have one hand for comment. Just wanted to remind attendees that comments are restricted to 3 minutes. Mr. Minikis, you should be able to deliver your comment at this time.
Yes, thank you. And my microphone works fine. I really appreciate both the questions and the responses and the presentation very much. And I want to make sure that we're being careful on public access to information. And Charlotte, correct me if I misunderstood, but what I heard was that what would be hidden from the public would be the fire roads. And I understand the reason why this would be, because the last place you want people really to go is toward fire roads. But it also raises red flags that could come back to bite us. And I'll give an example. Right up here behind me, at the top of the hill, is Chula Vista, where we did some work. And we also had a fire recently, past year. And if we have a northeast wind coming up Chula Vista, house to house, the only way for people that are staying behind is going to be on that fire road. And I think what we have to consider is a lot of people now own e-bikes, so that it could, under the worst circumstances, be the best solution for someone to escape. So I wouldn't say that we want to make clear that fire roads are a way to go. Perhaps they have to be in light gray. Perhaps there's be a big no vehicle sign on every fire road, and perhaps a disclaimer. But I think it's something that you might want to think through a little bit more, because it's just when we say we're going to hide something from the public, as a member of the public, it makes me think about it a bit. The other point I'd like to make is that as we move forward on evacuation, that we consider looking at this on a regional basis, that we're speaking with San Francisco, that we have plans, with Point Richmond, so that if we really, under worst case scenario, have to move a lot of vehicles, a lot of people all at once, can we stop traffic coming from the east on the Richmond Bridge and traffic coming from trying to go north on the Golden Gate Bridge, so that we can really move people efficiently out of the communities and into our major arteries and then out of the area. And thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I'll take the question number 2 first, and I'm just mentioned, I looked over my shoulder at Steve Torrance, and that's, really the coordination at the Office of Emergency Management and op area to op area. And they have a great network where they are communicating and planning at that. And the fire road route of evacuations, the MWPA continues to have the stance that we want our evacuees to go downhill on paved roads, even if the fire is below them. And that's actually the purpose of the next video that we're making, is how to evacuate down a paved road if there's fire below you and how you could do it safely.
And isn't implicit in that question that it would be on a red flag day? So there would be lots and lots and lots of notice, and people should get out well before the order?
100%.
Okay, more comments? I'm sorry, Martina, is that the only public comment?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back for board discussion, Bruce.
Great product, and I appreciate Larry's comments. But I think we as a board should recall that several years ago, each member agency took the time to develop an evacuation planning product and distribute out to their public. And I know Nevada, I got a packet, 10 pages thick. It had maps. It indicated in the event of an event where I should go. It identified where the safe zones were. And Mark and team, I think it's incumbent upon you to not forget that which is already out there, and to build upon what we have as opposed to replace what is already there.
Rachel. Yeah.
Can I get a response?
Oh,
Yeah, actually, I'll be honest with you, just 2 days ago, I connected someone to the Fire Safe Marin website where we have the evacuation maps for the residents. So we continue to use that resource.
Alexis.
Oh, that one is this, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to help with a couple quick comments because I know the last time this came before us, there was a lot of talk about, public and fear, and to Director Paulson's question. I mean, we've been talking about this as a tool, but I think really as it continues to grow and develop, it's maybe more accurate to think of it as many tools, because what's going to be useful to the ATC is going to be different than for the planners, is going to be different for, DPW making decisions about red curbs, is going to be different from the individual homeowner, maybe taking that, notice to do some hardening a little more seriously. And then of course, there's also the grassroots and community groups that really lead a lot of the kind of cultural shift towards being prepared for fire. And so I would just encourage, as things do roll out, as various data layers, aren't public or whatnot, just to really think about the stakeholder groups and how the data might be used, because we really need everyone to be working on their part of it. And then it's obviously good news that insurance companies use their own data to a certain extent. It makes the political decision a lot easier. But even if it weren't the case, I would just encourage us to really hold the value of catastrophic wildfire prevention at the core of our decision making as a body. And obviously that there's implications for property value and property loss, but I just want to, I'm here for catastrophic wildfire prevention, and I just think it's important to state that. So thank you.
Barbara.
It takes a second or two to connect once it's on.
It's on. Okay, so something that Director Goins said, and also Director Feynman just said, there are a lot of tools out there, and it is confusing. So when I was mayor of Fairfax last time, I'm the one who had the dream about these fire clear maps, and Michael St. John and Todd Lando found that professor in Irvine and communicated with Novato. And we had those mailed to everybody. So my fear is that when we release these to the public, there's going to be, what do I use? And so I know Charlotte talked about some of the disclaimers, but it does seem to me that we need to have a little more than a disclaimer about, okay, I'm Barbara Kohler. What do I go to figure out my way to evacuate? And I don't think it's this tool. I think this is a planning tool for our incident commander type folks. And so we're going to have to, when this is released to the public, I think we have to be careful about how we state that. So people, I'm a little confused. I'll be frank. What do I use? And so we have to have kind of steps directing people to the fire clear maps that I think everybody in MWPA has now for my own, how do I get out? And then what is the purpose of this? How is this used? It's not going to be for the person on the street to figure out everything they need to know. So I think we are going to have to work on a little bit more about when we release that, what the directions are with it. I'm not against it. And the other thing I will just add, Gabe's question about the insurance. they're going to get more savvy and they're going to start using more of these tools. So I used to do hazardous waste work, and every time we had a map with hazardous waste sites on it, it diminished people's property values. And I spent a few years with staff cleaning that up, so we didn't do that. So we do have to think about, I think at some point, the insurance companies are going to come around and start looking at these things and saying, that may be an area that we're going to redline. So I hear you what they're doing now. And I think that's great, but we have to think in the future, you know, should this become something that becomes negative for certain people, how that will work for us. Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel.
I was going to mention that the positive optimist side of me says that as we start displaying the work that we are doing and how our residents are are working to increase the safety of their communities in conjunction with the work that we are doing to increase the communities, we actually want the insurance company to see that data.
I was going to say, I agree with Director Kohler on some of those points, and following Tuesday's session around the insurance, we can only hope that they use this information. Right now, they're very focused on their own information. One of the things we've talked about is this report as a tool. It's a tool for the professionals. It's not, I think it's okay. It's like the same thing of going to WebMD. I would definitely get a second opinion. You could use it, you could get an idea, but it's really for the professionals to make the decision. And not all, maybe Bruce, but we're not the professionals around this work. And I really would direct, for us to direct the community on this report. Maybe some would like it and have value reading it, but I think it's a professional report. And I think we need to just position it as a professional report, and the professionals are going to use the information. When we initially authorized to move forward with this project, we had said we need to have the science and the data behind the work this agency is going to do. And that's what this report is providing. And it's absolutely helpful in terms of backing up what everyone had said is historical understanding and historical knowledge. We now have real data that in some cases supports that. In some cases, it even says we should be doing more. So I think that's the huge value of this report. And thank you for bringing actually data to us that actually really supports the work that we need to do and tells us we need to do more. And I think the message on the report, when it goes out to the public, is professional use only. And so, good information for those who want to dig in and be interested. But if you're interested in your evacuation routes, we already have that established for the community. So if we're ready to move forward, I'm happy to make a motion.
I want to make, I agree with all those comments. The staff report had the line, not a real-time evacuation tool. And I thought that was so right on. And if people, the public, the novice person could see that repeatedly, maybe on a footer, maybe it comes across on the screen, something, because we don't want people, we want people, as you said, Charlotte, you're going to have a link to OES. And that's what needs to be emphasized.
So, and we can also include the link to the fire safe evacuation map page.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's going to be on every single page. You will not be able to navigate that tool without seeing that in the event of an emergency, you need to go to emergency.marincounty.org. That's where people need to go. That's the single point of all the information. It's managed by the Office of Emergency Management.
Great. So I think we can have a motion now, assuming people.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, I can't believe this. As detailed in the staff report. Which one is it?
Approve the release evacuation
Second.
other related data layers to evacuation stakeholders, including Transportation Authority, Marin Department of Public Works, Community Development Program, law enforcement, as determined and approved by the executive officer.
So Rachel made the motion and Gabe seconded.
Right. So. motion- That is a motion by Director Kurt, seconded by Director Paulson to approve item 8B as detailed in the staff report of the evacuation ingress egress risk assessment. And now for the roll call. Apologies. For Novato.
Aye.
That is a yes. Director Goings. For Larkspur.
Yes.
That is a yes for Director Paulson. For Muir Beach.
Yes.
That is a yes for Director Murray. For Mill Valley. Director Burke is not here. For the County of Marin.
Yes.
That is a yes for Director Rodoni. For Inverness Public Utilities District, Director Donahue is not present with us. For Kentfield, that is a yes for Director Evergettis. For Marinwood, that is a yes for Director Shea. For Sleepy Hollow, that is a yes from Director Finn. Director Hilliard is not present with us today. For Stinson Beach, that is a yes for Director White. For the town of Corte Madera, that is a yes for Director Casisa. For the town of Fairfax,
Yes.
that is a yes for Director Kohler. For the town of San Anselmo, that is a yes from Director Feynman. For the town of Ross,
Yes.
that is a yes for President McMillan. That is, oh, apologies. For the city of San Rafael, that is a yes for Director Kurtz, and that motion carries by unanimous vote of all in attendance for the record.
Thank you. Thank you all for that tremendous work. Congratulations.
And just one last prop for STI and her team. Tammy and the whole team has been phenomenal.
Great. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be in touch later. Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, I thought it was working too.
Hi, everybody. So I'm the CEO of Cinema Technology. We've been around for 40 years up in Petaluma. And this is really exciting for us to do a project in our own backyard where our staff live. And so, you know, it's not just work for us, it's personal. So we're really glad that it's going to get used and it's really an important tool. So thanks.
Thank you. Item 9, committee reports. 9A, Fire Safe Marin. Rich Shortle of Fire Safe Marin will provide a hopefully brief report on this item. Sorry, Rich.
So I see we're really out of time. So our team had prepared a report for you. So I respectfully request that a block of time be set aside at the next meeting where we can give a more comprehensive presentation on public outreach. Meanwhile, you have our annual report. I think it's a lot of work went into it. And of course, we keep putting out our monthly reports. And so if it's okay with you, we'll just wait the next month.
Thank you. That sounds great.
And we can, staff suggests that we put them at the top of the agenda.
Thank you.
That's great. So do we need to take public comment on the continuance?
No, you can just continue it as you have. Thank you.
All right. Item 9, information items. A, Citizens Oversight Committee recruitment. Mark?
Real brief, we're going to be recruiting starting November 1st for Southern Marin, San Rafael, and wildfire prevention groups. And staff will request that President McMillan select an ad hoc subcommittee to review the applications. And we typically run with 5 members of the ad hoc. We'd like to have a member from the zones at which they are applying. So we would ask for one from San Rafael, one from Southern Marin, and then typically 3 additional.
Great. So when you hear from me, you need to say yes. Thank you. Item B, acknowledge the minutes of the September 27, 2023 Citizens Oversight Committee meeting. And C, acknowledge the minutes of the October 5th, 2023 Executive Committee meeting. Number 10, board members' requests regarding future agenda items. Any requests?
If staff may, just add a note that it is likely that we will skip the December meeting.
11, we will now adjourn the meeting and I will see you all at the board meeting November 16. I did want to add that after the November 16 meeting, we will probably be having a reception. So plan to stay around and enjoy each other's company. Thank you.